You're watching Talking Points, a focus on the political scene in Lubbock and across the South Plains.
And welcome back. Here's a look at some of the political headlines of the past week. Lubbock Congressman Jody Arrington welcomed in members of Texas Tech student government this week who are in Washington as part of what's called Big 12 on the Hill. It's an annual event where student leaders from conference schools talk to their representatives about things of interest to the kids. A lot of talk about Higher Education Act and student debt and improving campus security. And the good folks with Plains Cotton Growers also made their annual trip to D.C. this week, meeting with Congressman Arrington and Senator Cornyn here. Conversations about how the wildfire and hurricane indemnity program and trade relations with China are affecting the cotton industry. Governor Greg Abbott said this week that state agencies have already been working out a response plan in case the coronavirus begins spreading here. Right now, there are 10 positive cases in the state, and all of those folks are in isolation. State agencies will ensure that high-risk groups like healthcare facilities, daycares, and nursing homes are properly prepared. And while Mike Bloomberg was in Houston, his campaign staffers were on the bus barnstorming through West Texas this week in Lubbock at the Buddy Holly Center for about 20 whole minutes, handing out swag and then gas and an all-subs burrito, and then they were off to Amarillo. By the way, if you can look close here, notice the Bernie Sanders bumper sticker on the back that someone stuck on their bus. Now, stop me if you've heard this before. A polarizing candidate with sometimes controversial views, attracting a lot of new folks on the far fringes of the party, but making down-ballot candidates worry about the potential of backlash on them. It's not President Trump. This time it's the presumed Democratic frontrunner Bernie Sanders. Presumed because a lot can still happen between now and Tuesday night and beyond. But KMAX West Rappaport talked with the candidate who, as always, was on point on his points.
National media talks about Texas being a conservative state. I don't believe it. I really don't. Based on what I've seen running around the state, I think if working people, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, come out and vote, we can make this into one of the most progressive states in the country.
We will repeal all of Trump's racist immigration executive orders.
Bernie Sanders in front of an Austin crowd of more than 12,000, according to his campaign, pushing his progressive message to supporters, proposing sweeping changes to the Trump administration's policies on immigration and decriminalization.
We will legalize marijuana in every state in this country.
Sanders promoted his plan to expand Medicare for all Americans.
Health care is a human right, not a privilege.
How do you pay for that health care for everybody plan?
Well, in terms of health care for all, we're already spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. And you pay for it by ending the profiteering which now exists in the insurance industry and the drug companies, and the fact that we're wasting hundreds of billions of dollars administering thousands of different plans. You got one plan, he's got another plan, she's got another plan. When you have a Medicare for all, you have a simple administration which will save huge amounts of money.
All right, that is KMAX West Rappaport in Austin. Let's spend 5 good minutes with Democratic candidate for Congress here in the 19th District, Abilene attorney Tom Watson. Good to see you.
It's nice to be here. I travel to Lubbock frequently nowadays.
Well, I would hope so, especially with all this going on. Well, tell folks a little bit about yourself if they haven't met you already.
Well, my wife and I currently live in Abilene, and I practice law there with my daughter and son-in-law, and we've been there since '05, and we previously have been in Brazoria County, which is south of Houston. And so we had grandchildren here and seemed like a good thing to do. So we moved to Abilene, and it's been a wonderful period.
Nothing better being around grandchildren, that's for sure. Tell me about why getting into this race now. Was there a specific issue or just the timing? What was the spark?
Well, there was a combination of things. Number one was the timing. Although I waited until almost the end of the deadline to file, because I would not have filed if somebody else had filed. Because I didn't want to do a contested primary election and then follow that by a general election. So when Mr. Arrington did not receive an opponent, I did file. And the motivation was, one, this is something I'd always wanted to do. And number two, I disagreed with some of the things that were going on in Washington. So I decided that if that's the way I felt, I ought to get involved.
Sure. And like I said, we always encourage everybody to do that kind of thing if you see something you don't like. Tell me about some things you don't like in Washington right now that you think you can make a difference on.
Well, one of the things is it appears to me that this virus issue is being ignored by our leadership.
The coronavirus.
The coronavirus.
That we were talking about, yeah.
And we need to be prepared for it because I don't think there's any question it's going to get here. And we could sit here and say that, well, we're not going to have to do it, but we are. And even if it doesn't, we ought to be working to prepare ourselves for it. So I think that's an issue that I have.
What's your thoughts on something that's been brought up a lot by some of the other, the presidential candidates who have been through Texas lately? Things like universal health care. Where do you sit on something like that?
Well, I think there's a more and more growing evidence that a need for a single-payer system. I am not to the point where I can say definitely I want this way, I want that way, but it's a process that we need to go through. We need to evaluate our system and improve it where we can and keep what's good about it. And there are a lot of good things. I mean, I have good health care, but I can afford it.
Right.
And so, and also, before I could afford it, I had care through the VA. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I was in Vietnam. And so all of that needs to work together to make our health care system overall better. We don't need to start tearing things down. And another thing that I've heard a lot of people are concerned about, especially here in West Texas, is the absence of rural health care.
Oh, sure.
The rural hospitals are having a hard time. Some of them are closing, some of them are going to have to be closed. And we need to find a way to fund those. And simply to come out and say we shouldn't fund those things with federal dollars is ignoring the problem.
Yeah.
Okay, if you say you don't want to do it with federal dollars, well, where are the dollars that you need to do it coming from?
You mentioned rural health care. As you've gone around and talked to some folks already, getting the campaign rolling now, is there a feeling that there's something else not getting done by our current congressman?
Well, I think there's a feeling that we're not attacking the problem. And what happens is that you may well get funding for a hospital into a budget, but then when it comes to cutting the budget or getting final passage, it somehow disappears. And we need to be more aware of keeping the budget that the money that we appropriated in the budget, keeping it there. Because there's no reason that folks should have to drive 100 miles to get to a doctor or to a hospital.
Sure. Abilene Attorney Tom Watson, you come back soon. I know we have a lot more to talk about, and you've got a lot of campaigning to do between now and November, don't you?
Well, we sure do, and so I hope I'll be back.
Well, we will certainly love to have you. Good to meet you.